Okay, we are looking at something brand new here. And this is called the CrissCross Method. And so, what the heck is this? Well, this is how we put chemicals together. Um, and not every chemical is put together in this way, but a significant amount of them are. And so, what's going to happen here is chemicals have charges, and so that's aluminum's a +3 and hydroxide's a -1. And those charges are going to crisscross. So if you look over here, you'll see that aluminum has a 3 and hydroxide has a 1, and they crisscross, which means they move to the other side. Okay, so when you look at the final answer, the aluminum gave away a 3. It's right here. And the hydroxide gave away a 1. Okay, so the first thing you're going to learn is that in chemistry, we do not write down ones. And so the ones are not going to get written down. So don't write down ones. Maybe we'll put this over here. So do not write ones. Okay, so if you see a blank, it is not a 0, it's a 1. Okay, so if you see a blank, not a 0, it is a 1. Okay, now let's talk about the parentheses. So we've got a parenthesis there, and that goes around the O and the H. I'm going to write this a little bit better. So do not write number ones. Okay, what is the parenthesis? So you see a parenthesis in a couple of spots here and here. And so what's a parenthesis? Okay, a parenthesis, just like in math, is trying to show that the number outside the parenthesis applies to everything inside the parenthesis. So when we look at this one right here, this 3 means that you have an aluminum, you have 3 O's, and you have 3 H's. And so if you wrote it incorrectly, let's say you wrote it like this, ALOH3. If you write it like that, the problem is this 3 only applies to the H. It doesn't make it over to the O. And so if a number is right next to an element, like right here, then that only goes to the element it's next to. But if it has a parenthesis, then it goes to everything. So if I put this in parenthesis, better parenthesis, the 4 is going to go to the O and the S. So the parenthesis is used when you have a group of elements. And so what I would say is that you need to look for, when you're looking at maybe using a parenthesis, if you have more than one capital letter, you need to use a parenthesis. See, these all have more than one capital letter, and that means that they are a group of elements. So what do we call groups of elements? We call those polyatomic ions. And if you have your periodic table and you flip over to the back, you're going to see that there's a bunch of things that are not on the periodic table. So if we take a look at our periodic table, I can slide down, and on the back here, here's your periodic table. See all these things? These are things, a lot of these are not on the periodic table. So the very first one in the upper left corner there, that's acetate, right? Acetate's not on the periodic table, C2H3O2. It's a group of things. If you come over here, the -2 is carbonate, CO3. That's a group of things. And then, here's the -3s. So a very common one is phosphate, PO4 -3. So those are groups. So if you have groups, then you're going to use a parenthesis. Now I want to point out the charges are also listed on the periodic table. So you can see that there's charges in these tables. So you can look your charges up here if they're not provided, and the ones that I'm giving you today are, but they're all here. And then there's your periodic table. And you can see all the different charges, right? So the charges are provided today, but you can also figure out where we got them. We got them from the periodic table. So when we're crisscrossing, so see barium, if I was looking up barium, I would initially not know its charge. But if I go back to my periodic table and I go down, then, oh, here's barium right there, the very bottom of column 2. So that's going to be a -2. So there's barium right there, and that's going to be, a +2. So it's a +2 because it's in the second column. All right, so you can get all your charges, and I think what's the other chemical? Oh, sulfate. So the other chemical here was sulfate. So let's go up, and sulfate is not on the periodic table because it's 2 capital letters, so there's no 2 capital letters on there. So we got to come up here, and we're like, oh, we can look over here, and here's sulfate right here. All right, doesn't work as well in my. There we go. There's sulfate SO4 -2. So everything in this box is a -2. So anyway, that's where you get them. So now if you look at this one, it has an interesting thing. So we'd have the Ba +2 and the SO4 -2. And so what happens is if you have the same charge, then they're going to end up canceling out. So see that you can reduce those just like in math. So if you can reduce them, you reduce them. So those reduce down to 1s, which is what happened here. These got reduced. So if you have the same number, you reduce them. Or if you have numbers that are divisible, like a 2 and a 4, you can reduce down to a 1 and a 2. This example here has the parentheses. So they're looking at the parentheses. So you can see that you use a parenthesis with the polyatomic ion. But to use a parenthesis, you have to actually give it a number. And so if you don't give it a number, it doesn't get a parenthesis. So if Na gives away a +1, and then the PO4 gives away a 3, well, what happens is it's like NaPO4. The 3 comes down here, but the 1 we don't write down, so we don't need a parenthesis. I think that parentheses are pretty easy if you just look for capital letters. Now, if you use a parenthesis and you don't technically need it, then that would be okay. Not optimal, but okay. So let's look at what you're doing today. You're crisscrossing. So if you don't see a number, then it's a 1. So this is the same as chlorine -1. This is sodium +1. So we're going to crisscross, and it's a matrix, and so we're going to go this way, and then we're going to combine it with all of these, right? So that's kind of what's going to happen here. We're going to do some combining, and so the first ones, I would write them out like this. So I would do Na +1 and Cl -1. Now those are going to cancel, and they're also 1s, and so then down here I would write NaCl, right? So then on the next one, I would write Na +1 and S -2. Doesn't matter if the minus is in the front or the back. Maybe a different colored pen there doesn't show up as well. So let's use the red pen on top. Let's go Na +1 and S -2. Okay, that looks a little bit better. So these are going to crisscross because they're not going to cancel. So I'm going to get an Na, and the 2 is going to come down like this, Na2 and S. Now I'm not going to write down the 1 because we don't write down 1s. So just Na2S. Okay. Then we'll kind of keep going, but I want to kind of do some interesting ones. So I want to drop down to this calcium here. So let's take a look at a couple of options because there's some things we got to look at. So here's Ca, and it's a +2, and here's OH, and it's a -1. So let's crisscross those. So now CA gets the 1, and then OH is going to get the 2. Now look at the parentheses I used. So see, I used a parenthesis here because OH is 2 capital letters. So the ones you're going to need parentheses on are like the OH, the SO4, the PO4. See, those all have 2 capital letters. So you can think, oh, I'm probably going to need a parenthesis. Let's try another one. Let's try this one here. This is an interesting one. So CA plus 2 and PO4 minus 3. So let's crisscross them. So we're going to get a CA3 comes down. And now look at this. See, PO4 goes in the parentheses. And then this 2 is going to hang out right there. It's going to come down. Now what I want to point out, notice we never bring down the charges, just the numbers. So when you crisscross, we're bringing the numbers down. We don't care about the charges. The charges just give you always have a plus followed by a minus, right? So it gives you that order, but we don't use the charges when we bring them down. You don't have charges in the formula. So let's do another one here. Let's just do a couple more to help you out. And so here's a potassium and a sulfur. So let's do that one real quick. So then the potassium would be +1. And then the sulfur is -2. So we'll just crisscross them. And now the K gets the 2 and the S gets the 1. Once again, I'm not writing down ones because they are not going to be super. They're not going to write them down because it's just cumbersome to write them down. So we're going to not do that. Now, do one more with you. Switch colors. Kind of not a lot of space here, but this calcium is a +2, and the sulfate is a -2. So what happens is those 2's are going to cancel, and you're just going to get CaSO4 because see the 2's, they canceled out. So, all right, once you guys have practiced this, pay attention to reducing. So for the same number, pay attention to the parentheses. So the parentheses are something that students often miss. So these are the ones we got to worry about right now because they have multiple capital letters. If it's a 1, then it's just going to say plus or minus and then work through things. So crisscross, you don't move the charge. Watch for parentheses. And then reduce if possible. So things that are both 2's or both 3's, things like that. So, all right, give this, try to work through this. Very, very, very important skill as we move forward. CrissCross method, but not difficult. My second-year kids, my IB kids, the Chem 2 kids like that, they are crisscrossing things right now. So this is a skill that when we learn it, we use it again and again. So, all right, I'm going to pause it here, and you guys go ahead and work through the practice.